call the airline that has the code share, not the airline that operated the flight. My absolute number one rule is book through as few companies as possible. I have one exception, and you just brought it up, Peter, travel insurance. You don't necessarily just want to buy your travel insurance added on. You might actually want to go straight to a travel insurance company direct.
And by the way, speaking of flights, the other day I was on a flight from Denver to New York. It had 7 different airlines listed as the flight, right? That's code share. Most of the passengers at the airport had no idea what gate it was leaving from, what airline they were actually on. When you book online and you see a flight with 4 digits on it, right? It's flight 1845. That means whatever flight you're on is probably operated by another airline, and you may not have control over it. And the same thing on the way back.
Yeah, code shares create a whole different set of problems. Sometimes they can be sold less expensively, but as a general matter, if I can avoid booking a code share, I don't want to get another airline involved, right, when something goes wrong. Oftentimes code shares may get in the way of even securing a seat assignment because there is no seat map for the Oman Air version of the Etihad flight, right?
I'll give you an example that's happening to me tonight. When I leave here today, I'm flying tonight from Los Angeles to New York, and then from New York to Qatar, and from Qatar to Uganda. Now, it's an American Airlines flight from LA to New York tonight, but they're part of the One World Alliance. So actually, I went online and found out, I did my research online, I did not book online, and that flight was listed as an American flight and a Qatar flight. The American flight was $500 more. The Qatar flight was $500 less. So I'm on the same plane tonight, but it's listed, but my ticket is from Qatar. I'm still getting my American miles that I can't redeem. That's another issue. But the point is, you have to look to see the code share, because what a code share means is that you may have 5 or 6 different airlines listed as the same flight. That means each of those airlines controls a certain amount of seats on that plane that they've been allocated, and they price them differently. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. In my case tonight, they did it differently. A flight from LA to London on American could also be a British Airways flight.
So some of this is a little bit contradictory, right? Sometimes you want a code share so that you can save some money. It's just worth remembering that when you do save money, you're probably saving it for some reason, and that reason will probably come up on the off chance something goes wrong.
Right, but I'm rolling the dice tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
Questions? There's a microphone right back there.
Peter, you just hinted
right
my question. You all probably have a huge bundle of miles and points. How often do you actually get to use your miles and points?
That's my next hour lecture. Do you know how many unredeemed miles there are in the world right now that we've all earned that nobody's been able to redeem? Anyone want to guess? You're not going to like it. 34 trillion. They're never going to be redeemed. And the redemption levels at most airlines are under 9%. So if I said to you, give me all your money, put it in my account, you have a 7% or a 9% chance of getting it back, would you do it? Of course you wouldn't. Except all of us did it with the frequent flyer miles. And the problem right now is they've reached the point of diminishing returns where not only are we addicted to the programs, because we're still chasing miles, the airlines are even more addicted to the programs because they make more money from their mileage programs than they make actually operating the airline. So we reached an inflection point in these programs where the point is, if you're sitting there now today, any one of you with a lot of miles in your account that you haven't been able to redeem, think up to 330 days out, pick a place that none of your friends want to ever go to, that's not on anybody's bucket list, and at least go there. Because the more you let your miles sit in your account, the more they're devalued, and I'm not exaggerating, by the day.
I have very few miles, and there's a couple of reasons I have very few miles saved up. First of all, as soon as I get enough miles, I spend them because they get devalued, and I'm always sort of, I hate thinking about like calculating, oh, this mile is worth this many cents or whatever. Just get it and spend it for something you want. The other thing is I fly tons of different airlines because I'm always looking for the cheaper price. So I have a very few number of miles on a lot of airlines. I also have been known to fly basic economy. You don't get many miles anymore for flying basic economy.
Well, I have a rule about that. Friends don't let friends fly basic economy.
Well,
The only people who fly basic economy, baby present company excluded, are members of the Witness Relocation Program or fugitives from justice.
well, let me just, in my own defense, say if I fly basic economy and I have a status on an airline, I very often get bumped up to the next thing.
Well, and the products, people don't realize that the basic economy product is different on each airline. So American Airlines, the experience is pretty much the same. You will have to pay extra if you want a seat assignment in advance, but there aren't a lot of seats that don't require paying to begin with. They will still give you some miles. You can pay to make a change. It's not use it or lose it. United Airlines will not let you take a full-size carry-on bag onto the plane if you're a basic economy passenger, unless you have their credit card or you have status with them. That is something that none of the other airlines selling basic economy replicates. Furthermore, if you are a basic economy passenger that is not checking a bag, right, so they're not getting the checked bag revenue, United doesn't even let you check in online or with their app. You've got to go wait in line at the airport, right? So it's a much worse experience.
Which means you're in boarding group 11. And by the way, they should change the boarding group numbers, right? Boarding group 1 should be people who are on their meds. Boarding group 2 should be people who are not on their meds. Boarding group 3 should be people who are acting like children. Because right now, the only reason why everybody wants to board first is because there's not enough overhead capacity for their bags.
But let me just make the one mileage point, though, which is, so years ago, miles were a lot easier to redeem because there were a lot of seats open on planes. The planes were not as full. And so the airline is giving away spoiling inventory that they can never resell. If the flight takes off, right, with an empty seat, that seat can never be sold. And so they would make it available on points. There are a lot fewer of those empty seats, so it becomes harder. So, two things to know. One, you often see much higher mileage costs to get a seat because you're trying to redeem for a flight where those seats are going to be sold and you're displacing a cash-paying passenger, and they're going to charge you a lot of miles for that. So if you want to get a better deal with miles, what you want are the flights that people aren't taking. And that's often with a U.S. Airlines international partners. They may fly to a city for reasons other than it's the best route that they could possibly serve. I think about the flights that go to Washington, D.C. are often being served for political reasons and not necessarily because they're filling the planes. Awards out of Washington Dulles on foreign carriers are often quite available. There's often excess capacity out of LA to Asia. Everyone's got to serve the US, and the first place they come is LA. And you can get these foreign carrier flights, and you can do it with their US partner miles when there are these seats available. So the best deals, right, are often where people aren't filling up the planes.
I would just add also sometimes domestic flights in other countries with partner airlines can be very, very cheap with
Correct.
miles.
Question right over there.
I have two quick questions.
Can you speak a little closer to the mic?
Yes, I have two quick questions. One pertaining to the 13 countries in South America. More and more of them were getting visa fees. Why is that?
I didn't hear
It's the visa fees in South America.
Well, they just reinstituted the visa fees back in Brazil, I believe.
Yeah.
But Turkey has now eliminated them. So has, I think, I'm missing another one. Turkey just got rid of them. And there are 2 or 3 other countries that are finally realizing it's a barrier to entry. It's not the way you want to come into the country. But Brazil did reinstitute them, then they delayed them.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I can actually, I spent a lot of time in Brazil, so I can specifically say this was a little bit of a political football. The Bolsonaro government wanted to get rid of the visa fee. It also disappeared briefly during the Olympics. Now the more leftist government, Lula, they reinstated. A lot of it is political, a lot of it is reciprocity. The United States charges us for tourist visas, we're going to charge them. So it's not always logical. I think it's very illogical, actually, because it is a barrier to entry. Why would you want to go to one country when you can go to another country $160 cheaper?
Yes.
The other quick question is, pertaining to you,
Can you
Peter.
speak a little closer to the mic? I'm sorry.
About 20 years ago, you came out with a book called Peter Greenberg's Travel Bible. Have you ever come out with a later version? We're still waiting for that.
We're actually working on the next one. It'll be out in 25. And before that, well, we've had a number of books since that book, but we're going to redo that book because obviously things have changed. And so it's our challenge of keeping up with it, but the answer is yes, we will. Time for one more question if you got it. You had a question? How do you handle international cell phone service? It's the dreaded SIM card debate. Seth?
It is getting more and more affordable to use your own cell phone when you go abroad if you're very, very careful about it.
Especially on data.
On data, right. So T-Mobile, I had T-Mobile for a long time. They gave you sort of slow service when you went abroad, totally for free. I now have Spectrum Mobile, but I watch very, very carefully my data. The minute I set foot in another country, I turn off the data for every single app except for Google Maps and email, basically. And that really keeps the data use down. It's just getting more and more possible. However, there are places where it does pay to get a foreign
And
SIM
by the way,
card.
the T-Mobile, which I still have T-Mobile, I may be low on this, but it gives me basically a great rate for over 120 countries.
Right.
So,
well, I think it's free on a very low
Very
level,
low,
and then
yes.
you can get faster data.
Yes.
A T-Mobile is quite good, and it works in most places. However, 120 countries is not every country. So
Right.
I did have an experience. I think I had T-Mobile, and I went to Mozambique, maybe, and that was one of the countries not in the T-Mobile list, and I had a massive bill.
One more quickly.
last question, but speak into the microphone.
I've got a passport that's going to expire in August, and I want to travel in June. Is that an issue?
It depends on where you're going. My answer is probably yes.
Probably
Europe,
yes.
France.
So you want to look up the rules for any country you're going to. For instance, I was just navigating when my daughter's passport needs to be renewed. It expires in the fall, and how long I wanted to be without it, right? Because I'm going to have to, this time. So we were just in Amsterdam. You can go there, enter Europe through there with 3-month validity on your passport. We're in St. Kitts in a week and a half, and as long as it's valid for the duration of stay, you can go there. But there are a lot of destinations it's very common to require 6 months of validity. And so you need to be careful that you are eligible to enter, or you won't be allowed usually to board your flight. So you want to have 6 months of validity, and you want to plan for, if the backlog has been reduced, it's not taking as long as it was, but as a general matter, plan for a couple months without your passport when you're going to get it renewed. So you want to be planning to, for 8 months before before it's done.
Right now, the destination theater, it's all about being off the beaten track. On a photographic safari in Africa with Paul Stewart. At 2:30 on the main travel stage, the first leg of travel, Pauline Fromer, editorial director of Fromer Guides, takes the stage. And at 2:45 on Savvy Travel, are you brave enough to make your dream trip happen? With Lisa Knight. Pauline Fromer starts in 15 minutes on the main travel theater.
Just to add to what Gary was saying, if you're going in August, you better renew the passport now. The time, it used to be up to 16 weeks. They've got it down to about 8 now. You can also ask for expedited service. There are other services that will get it to you within 48 hours, but you'll pay dearly for it. It depends on how desperately you need it. If you're going to get a passport, get the 52-pager. Don't get the 28-pager, because even though they're good for 10 years, if you exceed the number of pages, in the old days they put new pages in. They don't do that anymore. You're going to have to get a new passport. And if you're going to certain countries, like South Africa, for reasons I've never understood, if you don't have exactly at least 2 completely blank pages in your passport, they won't let you in. So now you know. Ladies and gentlemen, it's viewfromthewing.com. It's Gary Leff. It's the tripped up column at Seth Kugel. And by the way, Seth, give him your email.
trippedup@nytimes.com. It goes right to me.
Very
if you
good.
have any problems you encounter when you've traveled and you want to get back at the company, I can at least give you some advice. I can't solve everything.
And my website is easy. It's the most imaginative name ever. It's petergreenberg.com. Thank you all for coming. and have a great rest of the weekend.